granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello, I made a video a couple of days ago about Hamid Koskan and his attacker, Musa Kadri. And I made some points there about a disparity in the sentences handed out to both of these men. So if you want to get a fuller picture of what was happening, just go back to the first video. I'll leave a link in the description. This is a photograph, a screenshot taken from the video of what happened. Here is Hamid Koskan with his smoking Koran, and this fellow here is Musa Kadri, who came out of the Turkish embassy with this item in his hand. Now, I'm going over this incident again because I want to prove to you the absolute and utter contempt that Muslims have for the British legal system. I'm not talking now just about the British way of life. I'm talking about the legal system itself. And I'm saying Muslims, obviously, I don't mean all Muslims, but I do mean that there is a substantial proportion of them who would follow the sort of line I'm going to describe to you and have the same deep down contempt for Britain and the system that we've built up over, actually, in a way, more years than Islam has been around. But that's another story. So you see this thing here. Now, if you look at what happened to it, let's find the photograph. Oh yeah, here we are. So this is the damage that was done to Mr. Koskan with this object here. What happened was that this man here, Musa Kadri, was, of course, arrested and prosecuted for what he did, but he got a sentence of 20 weeks which were suspended. And this is why his sentence was suspended, comparatively light sentence. He told police he was protecting his religion, and Judge H.J. Hiddleston noted that Kadri's actions were completely out of character, and that's because he was deeply offended by a man desecrating the Islamic holy book. The judge said, "I accept that you are remorseful as reflected in the references and pre-sentence report that I have read. I note, however, that you are now 59 years old and someone of hitherto exemplary character. Those who know you speak extremely high of you and observe that this behaviour is totally out of character." Well, that's what Judge Hiddleston said. I'm not entirely sure that's entirely true. And I think I have proof of that in Mr. Kadri's subsequent actions. However, I'm just going to take a little diversion here to point out that this fellow here was 61 when the judge sentenced him to nearly 3 years in jail for holding up a placard at the Rotherham riots. Well, they were called riots by the BBC and The Guardian. This is what this fellow was guilty of. He's a white working class man who everyone who spoke of him said he was a caring grandfather with serious health problems. When the disturbances happened after 3 children were I have to YouTube this. When 3 children were taken out of the gene pool by somebody who shouldn't have been in the gene pool to begin with, he stood there at the disturbances holding up this placard. And I believe he shouted at a police dog. Well, you know how we British love our dogs. And he was accused of revving up the situation, and that got him 3 years in jail. And this man of previously good character, I suppose, but who happened to be white and working class, got 3 years in jail. Whereas this fellow here, 59 years old, 2 years younger, and a previously good character, got a 20-week suspended sentence. You tell me in the comments whether you think that that was entirely fair. But do you think somebody has an exemplary character if they do this, as follows? After he was arrested for doing this, he made a plea by post first, he said he wasn't guilty, and he sent a photograph of the item that he had, the bladed item that he had in his hand, except that wasn't the item. He sent a photograph of a palette knife. In case you don't know what a palette knife looks like, it's something like this. This is a baking palette knife, and it's used for spreading icing on cakes and going round the edge of pastries, to give a smooth line and that sort of thing. That's a palette knife. There's a similar sort of palette knife which is used for putting oil paint on the canvas as well. But that's a palette knife. He sent a photograph of a palette knife. I tried to find a record of the palette knife photo he sent, and I can't find it. But that is actually the fact. And this is in the court, the summing up by the judge, that the fact that you sought to mislead those investigating this case by sending a photograph of a palette knife, something you were clearly not carrying, is an aggravating factor. And even with that aggravating factor, Mr. Kadri got a non-custodial sentence. Now, that was his attitude to the British judicial system. He had such contempt for it that he sent them a fake photograph to exonerate himself. Now, either he is really, really stupid, or he has no respect for the court system or justice itself. Now, I said not all Muslims, but many of them. I want to point out the charge that Mr. Koskan got. He burnt a Koran outside the Turkish consulate in London. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I said embassy before. I'm wrong, it was the consulate. While shouting phrases like, F Islam, Islam is religion of terrorism, and Koran is burning, which is sort of obvious when you look at this picture here, but I suppose he needed the narrative. Okay, and he was eventually charged with a religiously aggravated public order offence. But it was worded in this way: intending to cause harassment, alarm or distress against the religious institution of Islam. Now, that's not an English way. I'm talking about the language, not the state. That's not an English way of expressing something, but it is a Muslim way. Now, in the previous video, I told you I'd leave a link to that, I went through a little detour into the Crown Prosecution Service and pointed out that they actually have a Muslim Awareness Week or an Asian Culture Week or something like that in July or August or whatever in the CPS. And they have that specifically. There aren't any others. Now, there are Sikh Asians and there are Christian Asians, but basically everyone in that particular page was Muslim. And it looks like the CPS has if not a complete staff of Muslims, a very concentrated Muslim presence. And it appears to me that whoever drafted the charge must have been a Muslim. And again, that person, whoever it was, had utter contempt for the British legal system. This does not exist in British law. So whoever drafted this made it up. This is somebody who has such contempt for the British legal system that whoever it was made up a law and then charged somebody for it. Do you get how deep your disrespect for a system would have to be to do that? So it's not only Mr. Kadri's substitution of a palette knife for the knife he was actually wielding, but also the substitution of British law by a Muslim law that I'm talking about here. And even though Mr. Kadri has shown himself to be a liar, he got a 20-week suspended sentence, whereas Mr. Koskan was convicted of religiously aggravated, because they when it was pointed out that this did not exist in British law, they changed it. It was against the Public Order Act 1986 or something. And it carries a 2-year prison sentence if he'd been sentenced. But he appealed and another judge overturned the conviction. And now the CPS are returning and they are trying to appeal the overturning of the conviction, which would put Mr. Koskan in jail for 2 years. Well, probably not for 2 years, because people who go against Islam, when they end up in jail, they very often end up with very much shortened prison sentences, usually terminated by their termination. It's always spoken of as suicide. Yeah, like Epstein did. All right, so, well, that's it. This is what I wanted to point out to you because it's something I couldn't bring up in the previous video. That is that we have a group of people here who have absolutely no respect for British law. And that's not only mad knife wielders who burst out of consulates with something pretty sharp. It's not only them, it is people who are actually working in our government structure as well. Not only the people in the CPS who I'm guessing drafted the original prosecution wording, but the judge. The judge himself, having all these facts in front of him, still went very light on this man, whereas another judge sent Peter Lynch to jail for nearly 3 years for this placard and shouting "child killers" at the police after some children had been done away with, as I said. It is it's embarrassing for me to have to make this video. I am really embarrassed. And of course, I am very saddened as well. Well, what do you think? Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.